While we're getting the slides put up, let me start by thanking TIA and all the folks here at SUPERCOMM for the opportunity to come and talk with you. I'd like to start out by actually asking a question, and the question is something that I've actually forgotten at the moment in my efforts to get started on a positive note. How many of you saw the 60-minute episode on August 30th about e-waste? Show of hands. EPA did, and one or two others. I'd encourage you to go take a look at that if you really want to get an idea of what Paul just talked about when it comes to recycling. The second piece that I'll come to is an advertisement. Now, no, we're not supposed to do that. But in the effort of getting this to a reduced point of time, if you go out to the eccb.org website and click on the news link that's in there, you'll find a number of videos and other information on what we're talking about today. What I'm going to try and do for you is give you a little bit of the industry side. Paul has talked about the legal side. I started out in this back in 2003, 2004, and it was actually the result of Asia, the Asian community, and particularly Chinese Taipei, who came to us here in the U.S. and said, we have a problem. It's called RoHS, it's called WEEE, packaging directives, battery directives. This place called the EU thinks they're going to throw these requirements on us, close the door, and we're not going to be able to produce products anymore. And we need a solution other than testing our way to insolvency. So that's where it started. And that translates to, what does green actually mean? What does green mean to you folks? The survey says it means Energy Star. In the U.S., I agree with that survey results because that's what we hear. It's a whole different answer if you go outside the U.S. So you have the low power consumption, you have toxic-free materials, reusable, recyclable materials, onto supply chain management, which is a huge part of this. When you get to those EU directives, legal folks will tell you, you ship it, and you stand the chance of going to jail as a producer if it's not compliant. Ireland giving you a 15 million euro fine and up to 10 years in prison for the executive management team. As I've said in many of the trainings that I do around the world, if you want to get rid of your boss for a while, that's one way to do it. Product compliance certification programs, material, chemical traceability. That's what it's really coming down to. Think about the loaf of bread that you buy every day in the store, and what's in it is listed right on the package. It doesn't particularly tell you the amount of ingredients, but it does tell you what's in it. We're headed that way for everything we produce in the world, whether it's an electronic device, it's an automobile, it's a child's toy that has no electronics in it. Collection, recycle, reuse, can't say enough for that. Again, I hesitate to use the word Greenpeace, but one of the things they have done is they've chronicled things going on around the world. In addition to 60 Minutes and CBS, KPIX, Channel 5 out of San Francisco, California, there's plenty of evidence of what recycling the wrong way looks like. In response to the Asian community's request for a solution that didn't include testing absolutely everything that they made, we came up with an we came up with a U.S. standard, which is called EIA ECCB 954. That got translated into an international specification referred to as the IECQ HSPM QC 080,000. And yes, I'm accused of having acronym soup for lunch every day. I'll keep going in spite of that in order to try and keep us on time here. When we look at that compliance, we looked at it and said we had to have a process-based approach. Testing would only get us $600 hammers and $1,200 toilet seats. So we needed to have a process approach, and through that we used a basic quality management system and added the technical requirements that would demonstrate compliance. That starts with customer requirements, your contracts, moves into the international standards, regulatory regulations, national and international, design aspects, which gets us our EPEAT, gets us our Energy Star, which gets us our recycling, end-of-life programs. How do we buy these things? How do we buy the components that go into them? Again, I can't say enough. Your procurement process is potentially your biggest liability if you're a manufacturer. You have management saying get 10% out every year, and the one way to do that is to buy less expensive parts. Somebody's going to come to you with a part that's less expensive. Once you put it in the product and build a few hundred or a few thousand of them, you find out that it's one of the old products that has lead, has mercury, has cadmium in it. Because there's so much recycling going on, there's so many products being dismantled and parts out of those products being repackaged as new and sold at very low cost. Material management, we have the problem of getting having materials looking exactly the same, parts that you can't read, parts that you can't see with even with a pair of glasses. You need a magnifying glass to see what it is. These parts are sitting next to each other on shelves. You can't tell the leaded from the unleaded, the mercury from the non-mercury. Then you have your entire production process where you could inject new and unfortunate hazardous substances, the repair and service process, and then the whole collection, reuse, recycling. Second advertisement of the day. And this is not because I'm standing at the podium, but because I've used it extensively since EIA track was introduced to us. We have also taken the approach on a national and international basis when we do certification to require that the assessment teams have access to this. It provides clear knowledge of what the regulations are that are changing on a day-by-day, I presume in some cases, minute-by-minute basis. As you can see by this slide, everywhere you look in the world, somebody's doing something a little bit different. And I'll be on record as saying the U.S. is probably in the worst shape of any of these countries out there because we have a patchwork of 50 states doing 50 different things, no federal approach. We also risk having product dumping. When you can't sell it somewhere else, where are you going to sell it? I actually sat in a meeting in Japan with an executive from a very well-known company, this is a few years ago, that said they were moving all of their product that had lead in it at that time to the U.S. so that they could sell it because they couldn't ship it to Europe anymore. And there were other places they couldn't ship it. So again, if you're a manufacturer, if you're a user, if you're a concerned parent about your child's toys, keep that in the back of your mind. The QC 80,000, IECQ QC 080,000 specification really applies to manufacturers, suppliers. You can read this. It really was intended to be a top-down approach. Give us the regulations, give us your requirements, and a company using this tool can demonstrate that they are in fact compliant, or in the case of aerospace and avionics where they need lead, where they need mercury, where they can't do these changes, they can demonstrate that they're controlling those products that are not compliant with these restricted substance requirements. This is just a quick view. When you look at the requirements, when you look at the process controls, when you look at a certification, it takes into consideration every aspect of the organization so that all parts and pieces are in fact evaluated, sorted out, and managed. This program, although it's only a few years old, it started actually at the first certification in October of 2005. We currently have right at 2,000 certified companies, and guess what? China leads the way.